to Next Nation. We are here at Sirius XM Urban View. I'm your host, Sylvia Alston. This is Next Nation, and I'm here with my next guest, who is a good girlfriend. Yes, I hate that we don't get the opportunity to see each other as much as we'd like, but she's here today, and we're going to make it happen. My next guest, Gina Humber, is an educator in the New York City school system. I just will not say how long she's been an educator because, I've got to tell you guys, this girl does not look a day over 35. I don't know how she does it. She is also a serial entrepreneur. I like to call people serial entrepreneurs once they've started 2 or 3 businesses, and she has done exactly that. She has a book. She's an author. She has a book called Diversity is a Verb, which is a great children's story that I've read to my daughter. And she's here to talk about her newest venture, which is One Girl, One Globe Travels. Welcome to Next Nation, finally, Miss Gina Humber. How are you, honey?
Thank you. I'm blessed.
I'm so glad to see you. We finally got this opportunity to be together because we've been trying to do this now for since I started the show.
This is true.
You were supposed to be one of my first guests, which was now 7 months ago.
Listen, 7, the number of completion. You know. Okay, I'll be calm.
But you've been busy, I must say.
Listen, everything has a perfect timing.
That's
you know
true.
That.
That's true.
Everything
And I believe in honoring that.
Yeah.
I believe in honoring that. I haven't forced you. You haven't forced me. We just said when we
That's
can
right.
do it, we'll make it happen.
That's the beautiful thing.
Yes, and
Yeah,
here we are.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about this new venture. I mean, I follow you on Instagram and on Twitter, and I've been seeing you. You know, you've been doing a lot of traveling, been getting around. I must say so.
Thank you.
Having a great time.
Always, always. Well, you know, I had the diversity as a verb.
Yes.
And still do.
Yes.
And the children's book, It's All Good. So what happened was, of course, during this political climate that we're in, it changed things dramatically. And
how would it change diversity as a verb? How would it change a children's story?
Right.
I don't know. How would it change it?
I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
So what happens is that, you know, when you have President Obama, right, you have people open to discussing about race, you have people open to discussing about diversity, you have people open to having these conversations, right? Even though they're difficult.
Yes.
And then you turn, and then we get who we have now in office.
I love that you said that you honor the fact that I don't use the name.
Right.
Go ahead. Who we have now.
That's right. Who we have now in office.
Go ahead.
And the climate now changes. So now I don't get as many phone calls as I do regarding speaking on diversity.
Wow.
Because my speaking on diversity wasn't, oh, well, you know, you need to add a Latino here and there, maybe an Asian. No, it had to do with our cultural conditioning and how we view one another, how we view others. And those are hard conversations.
Right.
But people were willing to have that when we had President Obama. That's not the case now. And you see it play out over and over again on TV.
Yeah, it does feel regressive.
Right.
It does.
And so it plays out in the business world too. You know, so
I agree with you 100%.
I got to a point where I went into diversity because I thought the conversation was important for my children, for my children's children, and especially as an educator. But I got to see that that's not the conversation that wanted to be had, right? And so I'm also very Afrocentric. And as, you know, you get to see all this stuff over a period of time.
Right.
And I start to then focus on the fact that I want to build up my community, right? I want to build up my community, my children, not as a sense of exclusiveness, but more as a sense of, you know, building us up like every other group does.
Right.
And so for me, diversity, an easy transition was my next love, which was travel. And I started to look at travel and diversity and humanity in that regard.
Wow.
And I build my humanity up by traveling.
I do as well, right? But there are certain people who can come and go and live their lives, right, in general anonymity. And why do you care? Why must you care about what your community looks like, building it up, having a world around you that looks more inclusive? People will ask that. Why do you care? What does it mean for you, right?
Well, for me to care, right, and for me to help other people care, grows this compassion. We somehow forgot about humanity. We somehow forgot about, at the end of the day, you're my brother, you're my sister. Because if we really want to have the discussion about diversity, there is no such thing as race. There's really only one.
Right.
You know, we have different nationalities, we have different ethnic groups. But once you do that division, right, then that division crosses our economics. And that division crosses where we live, our schools, and everything else. So if I can get you to see me, and I can see you that way, then I don't mind, you know, sharing a plate of food with you, and I don't mind you doing that to me. But once we start to see each other as you and that and all of that other
And
stuff,
them,
yeah, it starts in that conversation, you know, it starts to happen when we start to do the you and them us. You know, and I'm always constant, you know, to say when people go, oh, white and black, I try very hard to stay away from those names, those labels, right? Because, you know, then it breaks down to the color, and then the color has its own kind of identity, what surrounds black, because everything is black is negative, right? Everything is white is beautiful and fluffy. So I dealt with that, and so traveling really allows me to kind of see other people, and it also allows me to see myself better. You know, I start to change how I view about Europeans and European Americans. But what travel really has done with me is create this atmosphere of humanity, really. And I remember we were talking about Jamaica.
Yes, we've had that conversation.
And so we've had that.
We can have it here because I think it's important to have it here, right? So the backstory to our discussion was the last time I was in Jamaica. My belongings were stolen.
Right.
And I told you it was going to be a while before I was able to go back to the country.
Right.
And you told me I needed to go.
Yeah.
I needed to go. But, I mean, things happen. And that's the first thing. I've been traveling for a pretty long time, right? I don't know if I'm as well traveled as you are, right? But I would consider myself. I've been to probably about 40 states in this country, and I've been abroad. I've been traveling abroad since I was probably 19 or 20 years old.
Right.
And so I've seen some things. I've been some places, right? And this was the first time in 20 years of traveling alone, right? Because I traveled beforehand with family, right? But this was the first time that I traveled alone as an adult that something actually happened to me. And it changed my viewpoint of the country, right? So, I mean, I'd seen poverty in the country before, right? And I've always ventured outside of the properties that I've stayed on because I'm that kind of traveler. There are some travelers, right? And we'll get to that later on in the segment about who you should probably travel with and who you should not, right? But I've traveled and I like to go outside of the property. And so I've seen, because I like to get a clear understanding of the full culture, right? But this time for me, it really changed what I felt about the country, and it made me feel like this is not a place that I want to return.
You know, one of the things that come up for travel is fear, right? So this is why I still encourage you to go anyway.
Not initially, though.
Right. No, not fear for you, but I'm saying most people.
It happens for a lot of people.
Right. It happens for a lot of people. Money is one, fear is one. But the reason why I encourage you, of course, to go back or, you know, to go at any point in time, because I know you live in New Jersey. Now, if this would have happened in where you live or in New Jersey, would you say, I'm moving.
I'm never going back to New Jersey.
I'm never going back to New Jersey. You get what you understand my point? Right. But you get my point. My point is that bad shit.
No, you can.
Okay. That it's going to happen.
It's Sunday in Sirius XM.
It's going to happen wherever you go, right? And
you're right.
We don't want to. That's that going back to diversity and humanity, right? That I don't want you to go, okay, Jamaica, and associate it with that. You know, you can associate it with poverty. You can associate it with, you know, how poverty has the mindset.
Yes.
But not towards the culture, the people, or the place.
Right.
So that's why I said I want you to go back.
Yeah, and you're right. And I think sometimes media can shape the narrative of what we view about a country, and sometimes it can be completely unfair, right? We've seen what's happened in this news cycle with the person who occupies the girl, let's move on. Anyway, we've seen how the narrative has shifted, right, from our media organizations. I think this is the first time in my adult life that I can honestly look over the news presentations and say, wow, that is really, they are really airing that with a slant, right? Because I am more experienced. I've had more understanding of places when I travel. So I can see now how media can kind of shape people's limited thinking as to what the country or what the region may look like if you go there, right? So much so, I chose to go to Costa Rica and Nicaragua for my 40th birthday, and that was probably one of the best trips of my entire life. Nicaragua was amazing.
Oh my God.
And all that has been said about Central America, about the poverty in Nicaragua, about, the regime in Nicaragua, I didn't find any of that. Yes, when I entered into the country, yes, there were armed guards stationed just to make sure that, and we had to walk across the border into the country from Costa Rica into Nicaragua. But I absolutely loved that experience.
Yeah.
I've never in my life had the opportunity to walk across.
I know, right? From one place to
from
another
one place to another. I mean,
know.
it was a wonderful experience. And then what I found while I was there was just nothing but beauty. So, and I agree with you. We do have to start to change the way we think about, what we've heard about world travel.
And what I liked about what you said, right, is that how beautiful it was. And I want that same experience for more people of color, for more, especially women, to do it. I do a lot of solo traveling. And I don't do a lot of group for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, we need to get into that. We can definitely get into that.
I do a lot of solo traveling because you walk away with this immense feeling, right? We're so used to as girls, I listen to you often, I do.
Yes.
And how we as girls have these roles, right? So from the time that we're little, we go to the bathroom with the other girls, go together, and we're so used to being together and doing things in groups.
Right.
Until we kind of get to a place where you do it on your own, and I hear women going, Gina, I'm really scared about going on a trip myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what, let's deal with that fear. And at the same time, you're going to experience such wonderful things. Imagine you figuring out what you have to eat for breakfast. Like for somebody that might be not a big deal, right? But if you've never done it because you're so used to cooking for your husband and your kids and you cook, but now you've got to do it. Everything becomes a beautiful experience.
Right.
And I love Costa Rica.
I did.
I loved it. And I also love the history behind it.
I love the history
But I
behind
also think that we need to look at travel in terms of the humanity that I spoke of, and especially as women in terms of businesses. And the opportunity that it opens up.
Yeah, I love that you said that, right? When you talk about group travel, I've traveled in groups and in packs. I did that a lot, more so when I was in college, right? We try to do an annual girls trip now where we all get together, and we did that this particular year. Yeah, girl, we had a ball.
Girl, I wish I was there.
That was a girls trip I absolutely enjoyed, right? And I've been on some that haven't been as great. I think it makes sense to make sure that you're with a group of people and you have the same mind frame and you want the same experience out of the trip. Because one of my closest friends, we are very, very close. We can't travel together, though. Because her experience, her understanding of what she wants out of a trip is to just be on that in a wonderful, amazing property. She normally chooses a Ritz-Carlton. So she wants to be pampered, for 5 or 6 days.
Right.
I want to be pampered for 2 or 3 days. And then I want to get into the town and see what the folks are talking about, right?
Yeah, right.
I want an understanding of the history of or the backdrop of the country. But another thing that you said that I think is really important, we are beginning to see a shift, right, in the way in which blacks travel.
Right.
And that is because I think Generation X, more of us, we have 2 or 3 careers.
Right.
We can talk about the baby boomers. But I feel as if they didn't get a chance to travel the world as much. Number one, because they were fighting for the establishment of civil rights. Number one. But number two, many of them worked in jobs where they were in positions for 40 or 50 years.
Right.
And then they began to experience the world of travel after retirement.
Right.
That doesn't really shape our narrative anymore. Our world economy has changed. Our nation's economy has changed. People are working jobs 20 years or 25 years. Then they're retiring and going on into something else because they're still very young.
Yeah.
But at the same token, people, I think we've kind of changed the narrative a bit around, we want to be able to see more of the world.
Right.
I never even considered the possibility of retirement. I'm 41. I'm starting to think about retirement now, right? But I never considered the possibility of retirement outside of the United States until this administration, right?
Yes.
Now I am starting to think of myself as a global citizen, right? But I'm doing that more so for my children too, right? I'm doing it for myself, but I really want that for my children. So the world is opened up where I don't want my son to consider, hey, maybe you don't go to school in the United States. Maybe you go to school elsewhere. And that's the benefit of travel as well. Seeing so many different ways in which you could possibly lead your life. It's trying to, you get out of this national thinking and into a global thinking.
I love that. You know, I just love you more.
We
Those
gotta
little
do
pink things are like floating.
We've got to do it.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, here's why I started One Girl, One Globe Travels. I started it for a couple of reasons that you touched on. One, I started on, not that I don't love millennials. I love millennials. But I did get sick of them in the bikinis and the size 4 always being the one traveling. I'm not a size 4.
And that's fine.
Yes, and I have a job. You know, like, because I'm always reading, I left my job.
Right.
And I just travel the world.
Right.
You know, I'm saying
and now there are companies out there that will allow you to do that, right?
You know, yes. But at this particular juncture, a sister got 5 kids.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
And all kinds of other responsibilities.
Yes, and so does everybody else.
A husband, a home, and everybody, and we do.
And it becomes like you look at it and you kind of think that's that kind of cultural thing about travel. You only see like this one set, right?
Yes.
So you see these thin and beautiful, you know, beautiful. They got hair. I done shaved mine off. You're like, there's a lot of messages I'm getting from it.
It puts you into that spring break culture.
It does.
And I don't want that when I
don't
travel.
want that either. Mm-hmm. So I said, look, for 40 and up, I want to encourage us. 1, we have the money.
Yes. Which is important.
We have the money.
Yes.
2, what it is
and the room on a credit card if we need be. Right.
But and 2 is we can walk away looking at it in a business opportunity. Like my girlfriend came to me, she said, Gina, I love Ghana. And I was like, okay. And I know she works at Columbia. And so I was like, well, why don't you do import export? And she said, you know what? That's a great idea. It's making a good amount of side passive income just on that alone.
Wow.
You know, like if you thought about like all the talents that we have, right? And you go to some place like Cuba, which I also adore, and those young people are clamoring for technology. How many of us can do that? Open up the doors to go, okay, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's open up some doors, let's do this. The Cuban government wants for people of color, specifically African Americans, to come there and do something. I can assure you on that. They also opened up their doors a few years ago for African American, black and brown students to go to their colleges, medical colleges, for free.
Yeah, I remember that.
So my point is that we need to take the opportunity. Yes, traveling brings about the diversity and the humanity and the growth, but it also brings about the money
and the opportunity
and we get to see what we look like globally. You know, like we hear when I went to Cuba, I know when I came back there was this word that people were using. It was it wasn't Black Cuban, but it was
the
Afro-Cuban, right? But you don't hear the Cubans saying Afro-Cuban, right? So for sake of the conversation, you get to see Afro-Cubans, you get to see Afro Costa Ricans, you know, you get to see how your blackness is really all over. And that it's about time that we started to take our money and start to fuse, like you said, as a global citizen and see how we can create a business. You buying land in Costa Rica for $15,000 is nothing. It can be done. You know, I always, whenever I think of retirement, and you brought that up, I never think of retirement in the United States. I always think of retirement outside, because with me getting a pension, with my Social Security, I could live very well in Thailand. And Thailand happens to like us. And they're a very dark Thailand people. And the money stretches much further than it does here. It doesn't mean I have to give up my U.S. citizenship. I can be in both places as long as I chose, like I discussed with my husband, look, choose like to stay in like Alabama. That's, you know, like your house. Why? Because the taxes are low. Because when we get older, we don't want to pay this. And Alabama and those horrible red states are good for one thing, and that's the taxes. So you keep your taxes there and you live abroad. You live abroad. You just, you know, do it. And I want to see more of people who look like us. I have some gray hair growing on the side. I want to see sisters like I was even going to tell you some people who to follow, and your listeners, of course, who to follow besides, of course, myself at One Girl One Globe Travels. But there's some people out there. Do you mind if I say their names?
No, sure.
All right, I got to put in.
You can share that information.
Thank
you can definitely share that information.
Like there is Onika Raymond, and she does Big City Little Budget, and that's she's a digital host on the Travel Channel. Because I give the Travel Channel hell personally.
Right, because there's not enough of us.
There's none of us.
Yeah, whenever I turn to the Travel Channel, I'm kind of turned off.
It's all I see is overweight European American men. You know what I'm saying? And so you going to the bathroom and squatting in China is totally different than me going to the bathroom.
Exactly.
Your experience of Africa when you see it is totally different. And I don't know why the Travel Channel doesn't get that, but I can tell you that, I thank God I have a great following on Twitter. And so whenever I talk about the Travel Channel, they get loads of retweets. But
which is awesome. But I think we have to make these I think we have to make these companies, these corporations,
absolutely,
who definitely utilize our dollars, right, through advertising and all kinds of different. They have to be more responsive to our needs. Now, I will say that, like, one of the publications that I kind of enjoy when I'm looking for a great spa around the country, because I like to do a spa trip at least once a year. I use Condé Nast for.
Oh yeah.
They have
every
year they will create a publication for the top spas around the country, and I've used that to choose where I'm going, right? And so one particular year, I thought we were going to travel to Arizona because some of the best spas in the country are in Arizona. And it turns out we landed up in Austin, Texas at a great spa in Texas, right? But I use that because of, following Condé Nast. The other one that I like to, oh goodness, I forget the name of it right this second. We'll come back to it, and I'll remember it, and I'll make sure I share that for the people. But they can follow you on One Girl,
One Globe Travels,
and that's on Twitter as well as Instagram.
I don't know why I can't get the Twitter. My Twitter is Humber720. I can't change it. I don't know how to do it, so everybody just have to go.
We're gonna get a tech
but
person on here before the end of the show to get this to get this stuff updated.
But listening to what you said, I remember telling you about the Airbnb. Remember that whole thing that happened with Bob Marley's granddaughter?
Yes, we're gonna have to talk about that on the other side of the break. But the company that I was referring to was Lonely Planet.
Ah, yes,
Lonely Planet.
I do too.
I'm here with Gina Humber, my guest. My name is Sylvia Alston. This is Sirius XM Urban View. Next Nation. We'll be right back.